Welcome back, everybody, to the Triad of the Force podcast, a Puerto Rican podcast about Star Wars and other nerd-related media. And today we continue our pre-5-year anniversary of podcasting here at Triad of the Force with our Season 6, Episode 5, Bombad Special, Wellspring of the Force, or How Midi-Chlorians Are Bombad. And to do all of this with this quasi-Star Wars Celebration Japan pre-show slash a preview, whatever you want to call it, I have the one and only, the master of midi-chlorians, Professor Jayro. How's it going, man? Welcome to the show.
Honored. I was on this show last December. Has it been a year?
I have
I'm almost
no idea. I don't
positive
know
'cause
what
it must
time
have
is.
been.
I don't know what time is.
I don't know what time it is, but I could tell you
It's
this much.
insane because it's 5 years. So I'm just like, I don't know. Could have been 5 years
5
ago.
years?
Could have been 5
6
years in the
years?
future. I don't know what the time continuum is.
Exactly. Hey, and you know what? In the cosmic force, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't.
Time is
It
not
doesn't.
is not is all abstract. It doesn't matter there. And look,
Isn't
I'm glad
time
to
a
be back.
circle anyway?
It is a big circle. It's a big circle, and it's a circle when I get to hug you and see you in Japan. But I'm so glad to be here. I'm super excited to be back. Obviously, to talk about something I'm extremely passionate about, something that I've talked about ad nauseum with friends in private and in public. So to be
very
on
publicly,
this
yeah.
very publicly, and it'll be even more public in April. But to be here, to be talking about things I love, and to be able to, I guess, bless your listeners with my thoughts, then man, I'm the one that should be thankful for you. So
No.
thank you, guys.
It's definitely an honor and a privilege here at Trial of the Force to have you back because it's not every day that we get to talk to a panelist at Star Wars
Oh,
Celebration Japan. So for all
uh-oh.
of you who are listening or watching and don't know because you live under a rock or on Twitter instead of Blue Sky, Professor Jayro here is going to be hosting a panel at Star Wars Celebration about the not controversial at all
Mm-mm,
midi-chlorian.
mm-mm.
And if you know or don't know, and you probably should, the Bombad cast, Professor Jayro, whatever you want to call it, has a video essay slash podcast slash whatever you want to call it about midi-chlorians
Mhm.
and how they're amazing, how they're Bombad, and he's gonna bring that energy to Star Wars Celebration Japan. And I remember when you had texted me a couple months ago about, do
Yeah,
you think
dude.
that Lucasfilm is gonna be open to this or there's a shot? And I was just like, shh, go for it. I was gonna say something a little more obscene. I was gonna say something was shoot, but I'm not gonna do it. I'm just like, go for it, man. It's gonna happen. And lo and
I
behold,
it did. Look,
you willed it into existence.
you willed it. So let me give some backstory here. This kind of stuff gives me a lot of anxiety. Rejection, as would anyone, gives people anxiety. But when it came to this, I went to two people that I know had landed panels at Celebration. I believe they were both. What stage were they? If you don't mind me asking, I forgot which stage they were on. Um,
Eh,
the podcast stage or the educator stage? Isn't there two?
triad, or who?
I don't remember. I thought you hosted one that was which stage was it? I don't remember. It was
The triad panels were at the HoloNet podcast stage,
okay. Okay. So
but then
this
there's
is
the fan panels, and yeah,
yes.
and the fan panels are kind of same
Got
but different from
yeah,
the
I don't
HoloNet.
understand how they separate it, but I'm hosting one, and I tell you listeners, the university stage at
Oh,
3 p.m.
oh,
JST, Friday, April 18th. So you're looking at the day of all the big announcements. My panel will come probably after the 2 o'clock or, the big 2 o'clock panel. So obviously, that's the day we're going to get everything more than likely. It's always that Friday where they're just like, here's all you've been, thirsting for. So I'll have the honor to be on the university stage. And following me is going to be Jason from Blast Points, the Blast Points crew, talking about
good guys over there.
the
Yeah.
event, the George Lucas Adventure show that was only premiered in
hmm
Japan. So like, there's a lot of cool fan community stuff happening, just one after another that day. And yeah, I'm looking forward to April. I've got a lot to hype up personally and professionally, and some things in the works that I can't really even share just yet. But
Yeah.
it'll be shared that fateful day. So
That's amazing. I'm so glad that Disney has removed the walls of DEI because otherwise white men would not have been
Jesus,
able to get a
no,
representation in panels at in Japan.
finally,
we had to export it because the last time white men were in Japan, it did not go well. Let's put it that
nope,
way. So
nope.
I'm very glad that Disney finally took down Jedi. screw
Yep.
justice, screw equity, diversity, and inclusion. Screw all of those letters. Screw those words.
All of them.
We need the white representation, white male
Like
representation. So
me.
I'm very happy. Thank you, Lucasfilm. No, but all kidding aside, congratulations. It's a big deal. I remember when we got ours that first time, and the
Oh,
excitement
wow.
that we got to be part of a thing that that we want to enjoy, and that that joy is really unparalleled. So I can
Oh, it's
only
amazing.
imagine how, and especially to talk about something that you're extremely passionate about.
And it's a presentation. It's not just like a conversation to hash out or figure something out, or and it's a presentation. Like literally, there will be a board I'm presenting on, and I'm going to have giveaways, and it's going to be a whole thing.
Mm.
It's not just like a watch this guy walk around and lecture the entire time. It's
It's
going to
not
be
going to be a live
engaging.
reading of the
No,
original video.
it is a very different. So that's the excitement and all.
Exciting.
There might be breakout conversations. I can't reveal
Ahmed
that here
Best
yet.
maybe shows up.
Maybe. I mean, I would love if George Lucas was just sitting in the back and sure this
Oh yeah, that's
yeah.
pretty good. Rick, that's what I was going for.
Let's get Rick.
Yeah.
Rickmeister.
Doesn't Rick McCallum live like in Europe? So
Prague.
he's close by to Japan. I don't know what geography is. But before we get going with the topic at hand, the wellspring of the Force, or how. And by the way, for all you wondering why this is a long title, it's a reference to Doctor Strangelove. Get with
That's
the
what I thought.
program. Get with the
That's what I
program.
thought.
There was something that happened today. We're releasing this video like on Wednesday, but earlier this week. So today, when we're talking, but whenever it releases, it's a couple days ago. Lucasfilm decided to rain on our parade a little bit with our conversation topic by dropping a not so anticipated little YouTube video about like a thing that's happening in April.
Mm.
Uh, for those wondering that you haven't seen it yet, it's Andor season 2. I don't know if you've heard of that one, starting this
Whoa.
Central American woke actor, Diego Luna. Apparently, that's just season 2 of that woke show, or non woke, depending on who you're talking about. I don't even know what that word means anymore, but it dropped. It dropped, and it kind of is forcing our hands a little bit to discuss it. What did you think? Were you annoyed? Were you like, damn it, this is gonna cut into our conversation time?
No, no, no. What annoyed me, and and this is something that I have the same sentiments about as one of our other friends, Alden, and he hasn't expressed this publicly yet, so I'm just going to express it for him. The title cards in the middle of like the first season of Andor was hailed by critics everywhere, and then it says emotional, thrilling, and exciting.
Hmm.
The one that I did not like, it didn't sit right with me, is confident and sophisticated, because that
Hmm.
almost, and I get like maybe it's a prestige show, or maybe they're presenting it as a prestige show, but that was the only thing I was like, ooh, like I don't know. That's like it's like if when you do skeleton crews, like, well, this one's goofy and fun for kids, and then
Hmm.
then
Hmm.
there's a baby green guy, and oh, this one's about Jedi, but it's kind of weird too. That confident and sophisticated just makes it feel, I don't know, just like this is higher art. We're above those things, that whimsy. Even like Midi-Chlorians, like I know it's not exactly what it's being
Hmm.
conveyed here, but there's the idea of like the weird is not confident or sophisticated. But this show is, because it's less weird.
But it's interesting though. I don't completely disagree,
Yeah.
but in many ways it's undercut by like having the rock song on it.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot the name of the artist. Apologies, and the name of the song. But I feel like by having that more pop centric, energetic, more appealing, for lack of a better
Uh-huh.
word, right? Because most, if not all, of Star Wars trailers have been like with John Williams orchestration,
Yeah, huge,
or
epic.
the analogous thing. It's just like the
Mm-hmm.
space saga, and Skeleton Crew was the first. Well, there might have been another one that did it first. I'm sorry,
No, I
nerds.
think it's the only one.
But
Skeleton Crew in
Skeleton
this.
Crew had the Huttese translation of that other pop song that I'm bad with the
Mhm.
name, so apologies to
Major
everybody.
Tom.
Thank you. And that kind of broke that mold to be like, hey, this is not just for the nerds that are watching this and listening to horrible podcasts and YouTube channels. This is for everybody. And I think that that's what this trailer was doing. It's one of those things where, and actually, I think it's a smart move on
I
Lucasfilm's
thought it
part,
was cool.
because I'm like, hey, this is the Star Wars fans are always gonna watch it. Like we
Mhm.
were already bought. We just wanted the trailer to watch it,
Of
because we're
course.
gonna watch the show anyway. So Star Wars needs to branch out. It can't keep catering to the same three people, and I say three lovingly, the same three people that are always gonna watch it anyway. and
Yeah.
half of them are gonna hate it, and the other half are gonna love it. It needs to just branch out and be like, "Hey, Star Wars is a club for everyone," and I think that
Yes.
it's the right move. You know, like
Even prestige.
I don't
Even
think.
prestige.
Well, it's prestige but fun, right? Because like,
Yes.
look at how much fun we're having with all the music and stuff, which I was not expecting for Andor, right?
Mm-mm.
Andor's just like
Not at all.
moody, grounded music and
Mhm.
atmospheric and stuff, and the fact that they did that, I'm just like, oh, okay, like
Yeah.
I get it, I get it. Like, is that the show that we're gonna get? Probably not. It's gonna be obviously
Mhm.
Andor season one, but I think yeah, I think we need to. When I say we, I mean the royal we, right? Need to stop taking Star Wars as seriously as we do, and obviously
Of
it's
course.
ironically it's ironic that I'm saying it with a Star Wars podcast, but we need to be so stop taking it as holy and precious as it is, and just have fun with it because it's not just for us; it's for everybody. So I
Yeah.
think that that trailer, in many ways, conveyed that. It's just like it's not for us; it's for everyone.
So look, I had my 10-year high school reunion over the summer, and me and my one friend Dylan, we got in an argument about. He's like, "Well, Andor is just the best thing they've ever done, period, bar none. Like
Mhm,
compared to Rogue One and everything that came before it." And I was, and I, they're completely valid in their opinions. They don't watch
mhm,
anything else. The only shows they've seen a little bit of Mando. They watched all of, Andor. They're
mhm.
gonna love watching this show. So it's getting people that normally wouldn't be in it back in it, which I think
Yeah,
is really
yeah,
cool. And then to your point, there may be weird stuff in this show. This show may throw us kind of a curveball. I mean, the release alone is kind of odd how they're
yeah.
doing it this time. And
And
I don't know how
we'll
I
talk
feel
about it.
about it.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? I don't know if I'm
I'm not a
behind
fan,
that.
man. I'm not a fan.
Neither am I.
I'm not a fan. I mean, I also don't hate it. I would have
No, of
hated it
course.
if it had been the the whole dump, the Netflix model. And we've
Mhm.
talked about this ad nauseum on this channel, where one of the things that we've really liked about Disney Plus since it started was kind of going back to the cable model of being like
Yep.
we're gonna do weekly releases because I think that boosts engagement, boosts conversation, like gets us hyped for the next week. And we're talking about it for, I mean, it's 12 episodes of Andor for season one, it's 12 episodes of Andor for season two. But
Mhm.
season one, we had like a couple of episodes that were doubled up, but we still had 10 weeks of Andor to talk
It was
about, which,
great.
amazing 10 weeks,
Great.
and most Star Wars shows have been either 6 or 8 episodes. Some of them are double up, so it's even shorter. So it kind of like the ride goes really fast. So
Mhm.
I like the ride
Four.
to be, to last. So
Yeah.
that we're going through it. So kind of have just 4 weeks of Andor. I'm like, sure, I appreciate that we have it per arc, so it kind of makes sense narratively, and it's still 4 weeks. But I'm just like, I would prefer the weekly thing. Imagine if
Yeah,
they
me too.
did that for Game of Thrones or Westworld,
Ooh.
and instead of just like instead of giving you 10 weeks of Westworld or Game of Thrones or whatever prestige HBO show we've been getting, we're actually gonna just dump it all, in 2 or 4 weeks.
It's
No,
interesting.
no
Well,
one
it
was gonna
makes
like
it.
it.
I know they're not thinking about us. I know they're not. But like when we cover these kind of things and we look at these things, we pick apart every episode,
Mhm,
like, for the good and the bad and everything we like in it, the themes and all of it. And this is gonna make it very difficult to be like every this means now every Tuesday night, I think that's when they're dropping.
mhm,
I'm gonna have to sit in front of my TV
mhm.
instead of for a tight 45, 30 minutes, it is going to now be about 2 hours and 10 minutes, because
Yep,
these
yep.
shows ran 40 minutes each. Not 2, well, yeah, just about 2 hours. So, like, that's
That's
a
a lot.
lot.
That's a
That's
lot.
a lot,
Yeah, that's a
and
lot.
I know us, we're not the type that are gonna watch it. I'll finish the other 2, Wednesday and Thursday.
No.
No, I'm gonna sit there just like it's a movie and treat it like that, and, the one caveat, the one thing I do like about it, and I think they could realistically do it, is if they did a theatrical release every week. You know what I mean?
Mhm, mhm.
That would be something they could consider doing. It's like getting a movie every week, which is
I
really
mean,
cool.
I don't think that's beyond the realm of possibility in
I
Japan.
don't think so either. Oh, see, that's my thing. And Japan being that next, well, I'm sorry. Japan is April
The week
18th,
before.
19th, and 20th. It premieres on the 22nd. I think we're going to get it a little early. I think they're going to be
Mhm.
like, oh, actually,
I
we'll
think
throw
they're
it to
gonna
you
give
on
us
Friday
at least the first 2 episodes in
in Japan.
Japan, then be like, okay, but now you gotta wait for it to finish the arc.
Next week. Yeah, yeah. Which would be smart. Just
But
another couple of
but
days.
ultimately,
Speculating.
ultimately not a fan. I want my TV
Nope.
shows to last the amount that the TV show was meant to last for, because it
Exactly.
just becomes another of the streaming symptoms where it's just like,
Yes.
it will feel, and we'll see. Maybe I'm completely wrong, but it'll feel like it was designed to be 4 mini movies instead of
Mhm.
12 episodes.
Exactly.
And one of the things that I
Ex
really loved about Andor season one is that obviously there were arcs amongst like the episodes, but it was still individual episodes of
Oh, yeah.
television. And like I don't need to go back to the days of 2020 or 22 episodes of TV. I mean, I think it's fine to like tighten it up so it's a little
Sure.
leaner. But I'm very happy with the amount of episodes that Andor has in being 12, because I think that 12 is kind of like that happy number where everything feels cooked,
Mhm.
where I feel like 8 is just feels like it's just it's
A little
little
much.
rare. It's a little
A little
rare. We just
much,
needed to
yeah.
get a little medium rare, a little cook it a little bit more.
A little bit more.
But it's Andor.
Mhm.
Some people don't like it. There's screws in it. Other people like it because Tony Gilroy wrote it. I just
Mhm.
like Star Wars, and I think that Andor is good Star Wars.
Mhm.
Uh, how do you feel about Andor? I know that
It just feels
you have
it's
controversial opinions, so give us something. Give us
my
something.
my thing is
Do it. You know you
and
want
I think it's gonna be different. That's my only thing I'm gonna say. The first season, while I did enjoy it, it's not my most rewatched show. I honestly, I've only rewatched the whole thing once.
to. Mhm.
Aside from rewatching, I've seen it twice. Is what I'm saying. But it doesn't have the whimsy and the mystical aspect that I like from my Star Wars. And
Mhm.
you can judge me for that however you want. But what I will say is there were at the end of every other 2 episodes, I left kinda sad, and it was the 3rd
Mhm.
episode that always brought me back up. So episodes 3, 6, 9, and 12 are always just, like, huge, like, adrenaline rushes, like, "Oh my god," "One Way Out," like, I'm,
Mhm.
like, absolutely emotionally enthralled by this, but the other 2 episodes leading up to it are always kinda like, "Oh my
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
god," just like, you know, the problems we see outwardly reflect this show, to a T. And so all the things we see about, our current political space
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
most
Mhm.
importantly, like, how we're treating one another, you see it in this show. So
Yeah.
maybe it's a little bit of too much reality in my Star Wars. Maybe it's too much going, oh my God,
Mhm.
like I'm not only seeing this, I'm sort of living through this. You know what I mean? And that's difficult. That's a hard thing to digest, but it also leaves you with some good lessons as to how you take what that show gives you and what you can do to apply it to your life. So I love it. It really is a great show. I think it's an important show, but doing it this way is the only reason why I'm going to like it probably more is because sad, sad, happy. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like I
you
just
get
think
it
it's
all
gonna
in
be
one
like you all
wham
get it
bam,
one
thank
night.
you, ma'am. Yeah.
One night. And yeah, we'll see. Look, I'm pumped for any new Star Wars thing. We're privileged to be here.
Yeah.
Literally
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
freaking 20 years ago in '05, we thought it was it. We thought it was done. I remember being a little 10-year-old boy going, oh, no more Star
That's it.
Wars.
Yeah.
Well, that was fun. And then now, we're 10 years from The Force Awakens and we're at Andor. It's so weird how much we've gotten, in 10 years. And I'm still thankful anytime I turn on my TV or Disney Plus account and it's right there and it's special and it's new and it still means a lot to me. And we could talk like this,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have known you if it wasn't for Disney Star Wars.
I,
So it's
yeah.
just it's
I agree. Yeah.
it's important. It's really important. And yeah, I love it.
It's one of those things where like, and we've talked about it before, but I will keep repeating it, especially now that we're entering a very complicated era of cultural history and political history, where
Yeah.
a lot of the things that are happening now are kind of symptomatic of the things that we have been seeing since
Mhm.
when was it, whatever, since since before the Force Awakens. Like, it's just been a
Yeah.
snowballing effect that is crescendoing to the point where we are now. And in
Mhm.
many ways, media is a reflection of the times that we're living, because we get to see how people use media as proxies
Yep.
for their grievances and their uh, you know problems that they're
Mhm.
manifesting through life, that they use media to exacerbate their inner their inner monologues that maybe
Of course.
they should be saying to a therapist instead of the internet. And obviously started with the Last Jedi, and it's one of those things where now, like you were saying, we live in such a wonderful time for Star Wars, where we have so much more so many more movies and shows and books and animated shows, and like we live in the best time to be a Star Wars fan because there's so much of it out there that it's incredibly privileged, right? To just
Yes.
be like, well, it all sucks, and
Yeah.
just like, oh, I mean, sorry that it's like to quote Freddie Prinze Jr. Sorry that that you didn't grow up, like it grow, you outgrew it. Like,
Yes.
sorry that like Star
Happens.
Wars just moves on and you're not able to move on with it. It's one of
Mhm.
those things where it's just, we would have killed, like you said, like in 2006,
Oh
we
my
would have
god,
killed to
could you
have
imagine?
something, and now we have so much and so much variety to choose from. That's just like really, like this is the thing that
Yeah.
you're complaining about, that there's
Yeah.
space witches, even though you love them in the Clone Wars. That
Mhm.
there's people of color in a show, even though George Lucas was already doing that in the prequels. It's just like,
Yeah.
what are we? Why are we even having this conversation? There's a big unbalance in the Force. The wellspring of the Force is out of
Oh,
whack. It
we'll
feels
put it
like
back
there's
together.
a chosen one that went to some nexus of the Force and killed the son. Well, the son killed the father, and then the balance is out of whack now,
Yeah,
and
maybe.
and something needs to be set right. And what better person to talk about like how the Force needs to be set right and how the Force lives amongst all of us than Professor Jayro himself.
Oh, I
And I
love
think
you.
we were right at that. I hope that was a smooth
That was
transition.
beautiful.
Hopefully, it was a smooth transition. I'm still getting the hang of this podcasting thing. So, uh, you know, 2000, no, 1999. I was how old was I in 1999? I was 11 years old. 11 years old in 1999. Very excited to go to the cinema with my papa and see
Uh-huh.
the new Star Wars. I got all the toys. I had that little
Of course.
Gillette thing with like all the
Yes.
little microchips
The
for all the lines.
Comtex.
Yep.
The
With all the
Comtex.
characters. I had Qui Gon Jinn's lightsaber because justice for green lightsabers. We don't have enough of them, and
Amen.
I had that VHS. I still have the VHS that I bought after the movie came
Oh,
out. And Qui Gon Jinn, one of my favorite characters of all time, still is to this day, and has so many great quotes, including "Your focus determines your reality."
yes.
But Master Yoda said, "I should be mindful of the future, but not at the expense of the moment." Uh, but then he also has this one scene. He has this
Here we
one
go.
scene where he sends Obi-Wan a sample, and apparently, like we can transmit biological samples through through Gillette razor blades. And there's the screen, and Obi-Wan's just like, his midi-chlorians are off the chart, and everyone's just like, what the hell are midi-chlorians? What are
Yeah, of
they?
course.
And then Anakin, our proxy, our POV character for the film, is just like, Master Qui-Gon, I heard you talking about midi-chlorians. What are midi-chlorians? And Qui Gon gives a pretty interesting answer to
Mhm.
to the audience because he's like, "Oh, they're microorganisms that are in your blood, and they tell you how
Mhm.
strong you are on the Force. Get over it. Let's
Mhm.
move on with the
Mhm.
rest of the plot."
Yeah,
And Star Wars fans cannot be Star Wars fans if they're not outraged by a
of
new
course.
concept that is brought in into the canon of Star Wars. And midi-chlorians have been something that have been discussed ad nauseum. Are they horrible? Are they great? Is George Lucas lost his mind? What is this? Is the Force supposed to just be mystical or is it biological? So many questions. It was so much shame that even George stopped talking about it and never brought up again until
Nope.
Mandalorian was kind of okay with saying it, but they weren't saying it. They just said
Counts.
M counts, and then
Oh,
the Bad Batch finally stopped the blue balls and finally said it. Midi-chlorians, damn it.
and they said it. I
They're
saw his Ventress.
midi-chlorians. And that's
Oh,
where we are now. We are here in the year of our Lord, Donald Trump, 2025. We have kings again in this country. And here we are discussing the magnus opus of George Lucas and his one masterful creation, midi-chlorians, and
mhm.
how apparently you have set the debate to rest. Midi-chlorians are Bombad.
So here's okay. I'm so glad that was one of the most beautiful buildups I've ever had ever. Number one. Number
Take that,
two.
Ken Napsok. Take that.
Good luck to anyone. And yeah, that being said, wow. So one thing I want to say, just as a preliminary thing, the conversation on the internet, and I know you've seen it. I'm sure you had it back in high school and in
Mhm,
middle school too.
mhm. Still.
Everyone always equated these things to a concept in video games called power levels.
Mhm.
And I don't address this in my panel. I don't address this in my video essay. I don't address this in other supplemental material that I'm working on. I simply address what they are based on what the quotes are from George Lucas and my interpretation of the mythology of Star Wars and how it all ties into it. But when we were growing up, I remember having these conversations as a kid. It all equated to power levels. That if he's got more midi-chlorians in his blood than Yoda
Mhm.
does,
Mhm.
Master Yoda, and you instantly go, therefore, he is more powerful. Anakin is more powerful. And sure, take away that. If that's what you want to take away with it, boom, there you go. It's yours. You can have those thoughts. If that's the only thing you get out of this, then you probably are missing the whole thematic point of their inclusion in the movie
Mhm.
that's strictly about symbiosis. If you look at the Phantom Menace, the whole entire point of the movie is that there is a phantom menace. There is a secret parasite that's controlling every aspect of this entire conflict. And if it wasn't because the Naboo and the Gungans, because they're not in sync, they're not in symbiosis with each other, they're not practicing mutualism, they wouldn't have had Naboo get dominated the way it did. A parasite came through, it harvested its resources, the plasma, and just having a place to take over. They allowed that parasite to grow, and it grew throughout the galaxy because people were not in sync with each other. The Galactic Republic, it says in the opening crawl, while the Galactic Republic endlessly debates this alarming chain of events, that it's all about conflict, not just outward conflict, but internal conflict.
Mhm.
And that's the whole theme of this little narrative device. And I think it's important for people to look at it from that perspective, because on an emotional level, sure, you can look at it and say, "Oh, this. It's Yoda's not as strong as Anakin, and Obi-Wan's somewhere in the middle, and Qui-Gon might be a little less stronger than Anakin, but more stronger than Obi-Wan." Like that's not the point. If you're
Mhm.
watching it for that reason, then you're not watching it for the sake of theme. You're watching it to
Mhm.
get something out of it that you went into it expecting it. And look, if you look at it from a biological perspective, from what George Lucas has said, midichlorians are in everyone's bloodstream. And it does allow them to be more susceptible for the Force. The more midichlorians you have, I can pull a direct quote up from this. The more midichlorians you have, the more susceptible you are to having the Force. Our friend Anakin Skywalker was born of the Force.
Mhm.
He, therefore, would have a lot more of these things in his bloodstream because he was literally conceived by the Force. Just that's he was a virgin child. I mean, virgin. He's a virgin birth.
Mhm.
I mean,
Mhm.
it's rare, and it's what we call, we see it in the acolyte too. Not really, actually. I'll take that back. In It's what we call the oh god, I can't think of the word right now. I have my notes pulled up, by the way, for this.
Virgins.
A virgins. There we go. Yes,
I got
yes.
you. I got you.
So that being said, the virgins, is best described as this thing where life itself, you know, can be found through the force. Like it manifests, right? And a virgins in the force is a deliberate thing for the most part, be it the force, be it whatever it is. And yeah, no, Anakin's the best case for it. And is there others in the Star Wars lore? Not to our knowledge. But his midichlorian count is high because of that. So that's kind of where I want to start off with it, because I feel like people get so hung up on it refers to this and it only means this, but it's not that. Not anymore. It's so much deeper than that. How do you feel about that? Did that ever bother you when kids were like that,
Eh,
or adults?
it's I mean, it's one of those interesting things because I feel that I had a very, in many ways, traditional or cliche experience with the prequels, in which I was that right age, right, where
Mhm.
I kind of grew up with them, but also grew up with knowing the discourse because I was old enough to be aware of what was happening on the internet and stuff like that. And obviously, with your peers and everything, everyone's just like everyone's partaking in that because
Mhm.
everyone either had the older cousin or the older brother that loved the original trilogy and just dunking on the prequels. And when you're a kid, you're susceptible to that stuff, so you kind of fall
Yeah.
into the tribe of being like, oh well, the prequels suck.
Yeah.
uh, so in many ways I did fall into that, even though don't get me wrong, like I had all the movies, I watched all the behind
Of
the scenes
course.
things, I had all the Galactic Battlegrounds, the Clone Campaigns was one of my favorite PC
Oh,
games.
dude.
So I had like a bunch of all the prequel games, so it's a thing where it was like this tug, the tug of war with the prequels, where like there's a lot of the lore that I
Mhm.
really loved, and then a lot of things that's just like easy to dunk on, right? And
Of
when
course.
something's easy, you kind of fall into that temptation, which is kind of what George tells us about the dark side, right? And
Oh.
it's fast and it's seductive, and it's the easy path, like Yoda says. So it's very interesting now in retrospect, in the 20th anniversary of Revenge of the Sith, and with everything that's happening in the political world here in the U.S., kind of see that redemption for George. Not that he needed
Mhm.
redemption, but
Mm-mm.
kind of see how everything that he was talking to us about 20 years ago, it's just like I told you guys. Like there's
Literally, here it
there's a lot
is.
of depth and meaning into what I was trying to convey. Like, is he? Hey, but the same way I say one thing, I'll say the other. It's like, is he a good writer? No, no. Maybe he should have given. Maybe he should have hired, I don't know, Bo Willimon to write Attack of the Clones. I don't know, but the concepts were all there, and he was right in a lot of the things. And I think that you put it very beautifully, right? And like describing how midi-chlorians are this bigger allegory for
Mhm.
symbiosis,
Mhm.
especially with your discussion of the Phantom Menace and Naboo and the Gungans, eh, as a proxy, right, for like our relationship with
That's
midi-chlorians. And
surface
I think
level.
and I think
That's
that
like
that's a very interesting way to then
yeah.
see it, because then I project it now, and I want to know like how your analysis goes further from the prequels into the sequel trilogy
Mhm.
specifically, because I now compare it with a film that I don't love, but the Rise of Skywalker, and see how even though midi-chlorians aren't mentioned in the film at all, we
Yes.
do see that they're at play in a very large way through one, the
Mhm.
Snoke clones, but more importantly, Palpatine's clone, right? Where
Mhm.
the corruption of the body because of the unnatural use of the Force through the dark side decays the probably is decaying the midi-chlorians, which decays the physical body, right? So I yeah, I'd like to know a lot more about that, because I think we've reached a point where we've all finally accepted that midi-chlorians aren't actually bad, and especially with Mandalorian and the Bad Batch making it cool again, I think now
Mhm.
it's like more pertinent than ever to discuss why they're Bombad and see how they connect throughout the whole of the saga. So why don't you tell us, like, how does your analysis go into sequel
So
trilogy?
I when you think about things and really reflect on these things, I'll tell you the things I do cover. I cover the PT, I cover the OT a little bit, right? I cover the original trilogy. I cover some of the Legends novels, canon novels. I cover the TV shows, live action and animated. But The Rise of Skywalker is the one that subtly brings back the most without straight up
Mhm,
mentioning the word midichlorians or M count. Especially with Palpatine's return, but most importantly, the dyad.
mhm,
I think the dyad of the Force is a really cool way to look at midichlorians without ever having to say or describe them. But I'm going to
mhm,
read actually straight up from my presentation that you will hear on April 18th. And this is so for those that don't know, I did, and I know you said it earlier, but I did a video essay. It was a 2 hour, exactly 2 hour long
mhm,
video essay that's very comprehensive. It goes into a lot of detail on midichlorians and dealing with how it was seen as supplemental material, seen through supplemental material that's been given over the past, I guess you could say 25 years now, 26 years. And all that being said, when we get to Palpatine, you got to realize when a Jedi dies, they accept the fact that they're dying and going into the Force. Whereas when a Sith dies, they're doing everything they can to cling on to that body. They're doing whatever they can, just like Plagueis. They're doing
mhm,
whatever they can to manipulate and cling on to that body. And when I went into writing this entire thing, I wanted to quantify the entire saga into something digestible, but from the perspective of this narrative device. So this is an excerpt from the newly written, I guess, revised, more concise version of what I presented, a year ago, last February, in my video essay. So I wrote this: Palpatine's quest for immortality in The Rise of Skywalker exemplifies the Sith's warped understanding of the Force. According to Ray Carson's novelization, Palpatine's consciousness was transferred into a clone body at the moment of his death. Falling, 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 the Emperor called on all the dark power of the Force to thrust his consciousness far, far away. His mind jolted in a new awareness in a new body, a painful, a painful one, a temporary one. This dark resurrection reflects the Sith's reliance on forbidden practices and genetic manipulation to avoid death. Unlike the Jedi, who viewed death as a return to the Force, the Sith seek to preserve their physical existence at any cost. Carson describes the creation of Palpatine's genetic clone. Nothing worked, but their efforts were not entirely in vain. One genetic strand cast lived, thrived even, a not quite identical clone, his son, but he was a useless, powerless failure. So we know we're talking about Dathan there, right?
Hmm.
That's Dathan through and through. And the difference that lies at the heart of Star Wars, the idea of immortality we look at in Star Wars, is the Jedi achieve it through unity with the Force, while the Sith pursue it. Its pursuit in it leads to corruption and ultimate destruction. This is honestly all throughout Palpatine's journey, but most importantly Rey Skywalker, because it
Hmm.
in the climax of the Rise of Skywalker, she is channeling who? Every Jedi. And every Jedi, there's no way they would exist if it wasn't for them succumbing to the cosmic force. They're able to communicate with her through the cosmic force. This whole idea of the living force and the cosmic force strictly comes from the Phantom Menace, and of course, much like the title, the wellspring of life is where that exchange happens. It's
Hmm.
it within itself is symbiotic. It within itself is a cycle of living and then dying. And look, if I'm going to be real for a moment, I do believe in our actual reality. When we die in some capacity, our talent, our energy, our love, it must go somewhere. Um, I'm I'm not that much of a man of God. I grew up in a Catholic environment. And I still work for a Catholic school, and I'm proud to work there. And I'm happy to work there. But all of this saying, I do believe that midichlorians kind of personify something that I have yet to really truly understand or experience in my own faith. And that's the idea that everything is interconnected in a much more poetic way than, the power levels of midi-chlorians. It's not
Hmm.
just that. It's so much more than that. And yeah, I mean, we see evil people every day in our world. And it might be little acts of evil or it might be big acts of evil, but they're throwing off the symbiosis of life. The easiest part of life is living together. And if someone's trying to stop that or make conflict in that, you see that it grows hate and it grows evil. It festers it. It just makes it grow like a cancer. And Palpatine, negating the living aspect of the Force is how we end up, with hateful people. It's how we end up with
Hmm.
selfish people, people that are only looking out for themselves. And I don't know. I think my philosophy of life has changed deeply as I've studied this stuff. And I'm not saying it's my religion, but I am saying it's helped me kind of cope and understand
Hmm. Hmm.
where I am in all of this. And I think it should for most people. Life is life. Life is no different than it is for me or that ant that's,
Hmm.
walking outside, or the bird in the sky, or the fish in the sea. It's still life. We're still all trying to live. And I think our energy goes somewhere. I don't know, Gus. I think our energy goes somewhere. I think it's important.
Like this one movie said, right? We're all part of the great circle of life.
That's right.
I think that was I don't know, A Bug's Life or something. Um, but you were saying as you were talking about Palpatine, which very beautifully said, and I
Thank you.
agree with a lot of it, and it's very poignant. I think a lot of the points that you made, but and it's a and I'm gonna think that this parallel that I'm gonna throw out there was completely unintentional because we all
Here we
know
go.
how fractured the development of the sequel trilogy was, and especially going from Last Jedi to Rise of Skywalker. But as you were talking about how Palpatine projected his consciousness into a body that's artificially strong in the Force, but then because it's an unnatural corruption of what the Force should be, it's rotting that body away and it's decaying the life force, right? But then I was thinking, like, oh, that's kind of like the opposite of the Last Jedi, right? Where Luke
Oh,
does the exact same thing. Like Luke
yes.
projects his consciousness
Oh.
out to
Mhm.
create instead of like creating a physical manifestation like Palpatine did through like the proxy body, like Luke is
Mhm.
creating a force projection. It's like a proxy of the real, where Palpatine is trying to just create the real, and they're both
Yes.
doing kind of the same thing, except one's doing it
Oh,
selflessly.
that's
Like Luke,
beautiful.
Luke knows that doing this is going to cost him his life, and it's the most powerful use of the Force that he can do. But because it's selfless, he's helping the Resistance get away. and then ultimately dies in that sacrifice in a natural way, and he
Mhm.
accepts that burden, as as a true Jedi would, where Palpatine does the opposite of what Luke is doing. Like they're doing similar things in
Yes.
opposite ways, and one is life and one is death in many ways. Because as much as Palpatine wants to extend his life, he's ultimately just doing a corruption of death in many ways. So
Mhm.
unintentional parallels there between
That's
Last
beautiful.
Jedi and the Rise of
I
Skywalker.
wanna add that now. Why would you say that? I wanna add that
Add it. Just
because
put
look,
just put a little G every
just a
like
little
when
G.
you put it
Okay.
like little asterisk. When you
Damn.
do the footnotes, just
Yes.
put a
Well,
little
look,
footnote to this podcast.
and I will say, if the whole Luke dying in TLJ does trouble you, like you gotta think. Imagine if you opened yourself up to that much energy and
Mhm,
power, and you did project your being across the galaxy. Like, there's something to be said about, like, when you open yourself up to anything, you're vulnerable to it really taking over your life, and
mhm,
not in a bad way, but also in a good way. And I think, like, imagine if your cells, your midichlorians, and I will say this, biologically speaking, um, a lot of what we do, a lot of what you just did, you just drank a glass of water, right? I mean, that's involuntary. It's
mhm,
there, it's in front of you. You need it, you're thirsty. But you not only you need it, what else needs it? Those things inside of
mhm,
you.
mhm,
It's not as much as you think you're in control. I hate to say it to your listeners and you're not. You're just not. Nothing about this. The only sense of control you have is pretty much what you eat and do, and how you breathe, how you treat your body. But,
mhm,
like, when it comes down to it, if one part of your body internally fails, then the whole system fails,
mhm, mhm,
and that's not something you have any control over. And I think it's important to say that from a biological point of view, like that, this stuff really does make sense. It has nothing to do with power levels. It has nothing to do with how you control it. It has everything to do with you have to be treating yourself right, and
mhm,
then hopefully it'll be treating you right. It's not the same in every case, but it's ultimately what we all fundamentally seek is some homeostasis with yourself.
mhm, mhm,
You need that, and you need that in your personal life, right? You
mhm,
want to have homeostasis with your loved ones. You never want to have any strife or problems, but those things still come up, and you have to learn to handle it. It's how you handle it that's
mhm.
important. Do you feed into the anger? Do you accept them? What is
It's
it?
the temptations
Yes.
and the challenges that we face against the dark side within ourselves isn't a battle you win once and you're over, which I think it's what
Yes.
people were reacting vitriolically
Mhm.
against the Last Jedi, seeing a Luke that's not, and to quote you, right? And I think that
Mhm.
it's very symptomatic of people's distaste for that movie. Is they
Mhm.
wanted the power up, they wanted
Yeah.
Uber Luke, who's ripped and just I don't know, like crushing cans
Mhm.
onto his forehead or something, and being like, "Oh yeah, I'm the I'm super Luke here again,"
Yeah.
which I think, as much as I enjoyed that game, it's the Force Unleashed's fault.
Yes.
If you hadn't had Starkiller bring down a Star Destroyer, people wouldn't have been like, "Oh well, now Luke needs to do it,"
Yep.
you know. And I think it's much more poignant than that because it's just like it's a Luke that's still struggling with legacy and being
Yep.
like, "I am a powerful Force user. I conquered, the Darth Vader and the Emperor. I brought my father back from the dark side,
Mhm.
but now like it's the darkness is back, and
Yes.
I'm still failing." And I think
Yes.
that's why I love that scene with Yoda and Luke, because Yoda's
Oh,
just like, "Hey man, it doesn't stop, and your journey ends here, but the thing that the baton that you're passing to the next generation, they're gonna surpass you." And it's one of those things where
yes.
it's like the power level isn't really like amongst ourselves in terms of like how strong we become. It's about how much we're empowering the next generation, the
Mhm.
next people to become even more powerful. But powerful not within, right, the your skills with the lightsaber, are powerful as a human being.
Of course.
And you're, like you said, you're in your homeostasis with everyone around you.
Yes. You're the ability to acknowledge anything within, much like Luke did. I mean, he acknowledges that he has a father who was Darth Vader. He acknowledges that he
Yeah.
inevitably and by accident, just based on fear alone, almost killed his nephew, or
Mhm.
thought about, didn't try to kill him, thought about it. And
Mhm.
his instinct and fear, he did not want to see another Vader, and he ignites that blade.
Mhm.
And you know, that's internal conflict. It's someone that's been through something. It's the trauma of it all. The
Mhm,
way you
mhm.
respond to one thing is different than the way I respond to something. And that's just part of the human aspect of everything that we do as artists and as people that consume art and people that just want to live, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
Uh
yeah.
I hate living in a time, and I think it's everyone. I think it's the generational effect and change that we're all progressing through. Maybe it's a little bit more poignant than others. But like, one day we'll look back in 2025 with rose color glasses. We just
I hope
will.
so. I hope so.
It's funny. We just will, even if it's as bad as it is. But it's just, and you know what? I hope I'm wrong. I hope it's even better than that, or I hope it changes and it does get better. But what I'm trying to pick at and look at is that the more you the more you allow things to happen uh naturally and as they should and in a beautiful way, the better things get for you. But there are times to stand up and fight, and that's what Star Wars teaches us, and that's what Midi-Chlorians teach us too. You got to fight for your right, man. You got to fight for who you are and what you do, and it's so much more than just this little narrative. It
Mhm,
gets
mhm.
to be a lot deeper, and like, other shows have done it really well too. And how people interpret those other shows as well. Like, I mean, The Acolyte. Whenever the whole, I know, one of the greatest,
I love
and
the
and
Acolyte, yeah.
and it does so much for midichlorians without even saying it, except
Mhm.
for once. They do say M count once, and it's when Torben says it. But that show, whenever they revealed that the Anasaia twins were
Mhm,
from
mhm.
one consciousness, everyone automatically was like, "Oh, they just decanonized Anakin Skywalker." Do you remember that?
Which
Do you remember how?
yeah.
Which not the case,
Well,
not the
which I
case at
mean,
all.
people got upset over Kiarimandi's birthday, so, what do you expect?
So I want to talk about that for 1 second, and I don't
Kiarimandi?
think any. No, God, no, 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 no. The Anasaia
Because if you wanna
twins.
talk about Kiarimandi, I'm gonna have to change the artwork for this episode.
Okay, well, I'm not doing that. I don't want to bring him up. The whole point of that character, by the way, is to say the opposite of what everyone else is thinking, and the opposite of the truth. But
Mhm,
like, so Soul, Master Soul,
mhm.
he obviously was keeping his mouth shut all eight of those episodes, and I love this line. I wrote it down here, and it's in the observation. It's in the whole thing. The in the finale, Soul's declaration of "You are not twins. You're not even sisters. She created life. Your lives. I believe she used the Force to create you and Osha." So like only a virgins could create that type of power, right? Can only create that ability. I was very sad to see everyone's response to that show. Like, well, not everyone, most people, most morons. They were like, "Oh my god, they just ruined Anakin. They just ruined Anakin. They made Anakin. They're ruining George's canon." Well, that wasn't the case at all. There was a baby. There was a baby in Sister Coral, right? There was a child. But what Mother Anastasia did, which is what Plagueis was trying to look, is how do they split that baby into two separate consciousness,
Mhm.
right? Almost the yin yang kind of idea of like, well, this one's powerful in the dark, this one's powerful in the light, and they reverse roles when it's not the case at all. I
Mhm.
I love that you can do this midichlorian thing and this midichlorian narrative and switch it up because of course May is going to be bad. I'm sorry, Osha's going to turn bad. It just makes sense. You manipulated life. You inevitably, when you split someone's consciousness or when you split someone into two people, more than likely the one that you split, the one that you let have freedom, the one that you give too much to is the one that's going to want too much back in return,
Mhm, mhm.
right?
It's almost like a
She
pendulum, right? Like like the more you push
Yes,
one towards one side, the other one has to flip towards the other,
yes. It's
especially if
a
they're
it's a
the same being in many ways.
exactly, and I think it's a complex thing that Leslie Headland tried to approach, that show with is like, what if it is like Anakin, but they're already going to be shifted to the dark side? It's
Mhm.
not going to take 15 years of growing up to shift to the dark side. It's going to be it's gonna be like a week or whatever the acolyte
Yeah, yeah,
takes
yeah.
place in. It's the temptation. It's I've been wronged. My mother was killed in cold blood. Therefore, I need to avenge them. The literal forging of a new saber using her master's old saber. Like it's
Mhm.
just that show was brilliant. That show did so much, and I think it's part of the problem with our culture now too, which is kind of a what we've really looked at in this episode is like, you know, our culture has become a point where if we don't like it, not us, but if
Mhm.
some people don't like it, they're going to do everything to get rid of it. And that's
Mhm,
not what you
mhm,
should do with
mhm,
art.
mhm.
And you can't do that with art. The more you chase art away is how you get art canceled. It's how you make musicians completely abandon their fan base is because you
A
changed your sound up. You
and
want them to evolve.
historically, the cultures in which that has happened, historically, they don't end well, or at
No,
least not remembered well. Let's put it
exactly.
mildly.
I agree. And like, I don't know. I love this topic and I love talking to you and I love reflecting on this stuff. And I hope as listeners of your show, they've been given the opportunity to reflect on it too. Cause I mean, this is not just, I keep saying it. I don't mean to repeat myself. I haven't talked about this on any other show either. It's not just power levels. It's not just that. It's not just a way to look at the force biologically. Because if you're going to look at life biologically, I mean, it is a miracle that we're here.
Mhm,
I don't care if you believe in the Adam Eve story or if you believe in whatever it is, but like the fact that at some point in our great lineage of evolution that one cell decided to split and one cell had mitochondria in it and the other cell had chlorophyll in it and that was it. Like that's an amazing thing. That within itself is mystical. The fact that we even got from being these things that are single cell organisms to fully functioning, things with technology where we can talk across thousands of miles. You know what I mean?
mhm,
It's just
mhm,
beautiful. It's incredible. I don't know. I tend to get lost in the beauty of it all because it's so much more beauty than it is spite in this
mhm,
topic.
mhm,
At
mhm.
least that's just me.
And you're talking about all of this like mystical end, right? Of how life and in more ways than one, right? Not just like life in Star Wars, but life in general
Yeah.
comes to be. And if there's someone who talks about the mythical in a very educated
Oh,
way, it's the grandpappy of all professors, at least when it comes to the hero's journey, and that's Joseph
mhm.
Campbell. And while watching your video, you definitely make a lot of references to Professor Campbell on that one, or Daddy Campbell, whichever you prefer. And as we know, Uncle George himself was a big fan of Joseph Campbell and used his hero with a thousand faces as a structure, right, in which to base
Yes.
Star Wars upon. So, how do you bring Joseph Campbell into your analysis of midi-chlorians, and how does he affect how you've viewed and analyzed them?
I don't have my library near me, but that is he's the one author I have the most books by. And that's what I read in my pastime. Like I think it's this I'm a school teacher, but I didn't mention that before. I'm a middle school teacher, so if if middle school science wasn't your jam, hopefully I make it your jam now. But that being said, at school this week, we have a break coming up next week for Mardi Gras break, and we have Read Across America this week, which is like a big thing
I hope that your
schools
students
do.
don't go to Bourbon Street. They're
No,
far too young,
no,
far too young.
they're children.
I
But
know.
but we have Read Across America, which they give us a break in the middle of the day, 45 minutes to read whatever book you bring to work. And I'm like, that's one of my favorite days of the year because like they literally like they don't want any teachers working, they don't want any students working. And since I don't teach a homeroom class, I can just literally sit in my classroom and just read a book for 45 minutes. And it's always a Campbell book. And I'm not saying I'm super well versed in the mythologies of it all. I just like how someone like Campbell can quantify the human experience in a way that allows me to reflect on it on a deeper level. And like, if we're really going to look at mythology and Joseph Campbell's research, if it wasn't for not just him, many anthropologists, we wouldn't have a kind of understanding of where religion and mythology came from
Mhm,
because there is a structure to it. There is a an observation that must have happened 500,000 years ago, a couple million years ago, for some proto human to look at death and realize, okay, the thing that was once there is now no longer there. We must honor that person that was a person or was a being, um, psychologically speaking. And, some of our earliest burials were from 400,000 years ago. It's just something has been stirring in our mind for that long to rationalize, okay, this thing that was there is no longer there. And look, he says it in this. So I have the exact quotes pulled up. He says And he's talking to Bill Moyers right here. And
Mhm,
it's funny
mhm,
enough,
mhm, mhm,
George Lucas produced this documentary called The Power of the Myth. And it
mhm,
was a series that aired on PBS. And it was all about Campbell kind of rationalizing mythology and like how we should look at it. What is the earliest evidence of mythology, what it looks like. And he says here, talking to Bill Moyers, who's another researcher, he said the earliest evidence of anything like mythological thing is associated with graves. Moyers responds, and they suggest that men and women saw life and then they didn't see life, and so they wondered about it. Campbell responds, it must have been something like that. You only have to imagine what your own experience would be. There was a person who was alive and warm before you, is now lying there cold, beginning to rot. Something was there that isn't there. Where is it now? Animals have an experience of watching their companions dying, but as far as they know, they have no further thoughts about it. And there's no evidence that humans thought about death in a significant way until the Neanderthal period, when weapons and animal sacrifices occur with burials. We do not know that burials always involve the idea of continued life beyond the visible one, a visible one of a plane that being that is behind the visible plane, that's somehow supportive. Oh, I messed that whole part up. However, we do know that burials always involve the idea of the continued life beyond the visible one, which is that's the force, right? Of a plane of being that is behind the visible plane, that's somehow supportive of the visible one to which we have to relate. I would say the basic theme of all mythology is that there is an invisible plane supporting the visible one. And like, I mean, one of the biggest things we celebrate in our culture, funerals. That's
mhm,
all that is. That's all we want. And I don't know how much death you've experienced. I've had the opportunity to experience a good bit of death. And for the most part, two deaths stand out to me. I watched both my grandfathers pass away before my eyes. I was there in the room with them, with my grandmother in one scenario and with my whole family in the other scenario. And it was a very powerful experience because I watched someone that more than likely saw the beginning of my life and I witnessed the end of theirs. And
mhm,
in that moment, so many emotions fled through that person that was a jokester, that person that was funny, that person that was researching and doing so many things throughout their entire life is now gone. It's just gone.
mhm, mhm,
Everything about them is gone. They must go somewhere. That invisible plane really does support a reality. I mean, it's just the only way I see it. And Campbell quantifies it in a way that I haven't really considered it before. That is how we rationalize death, but it's also how Native Americans thought of death
mhm,
too. They would kill an organism, they would pray over it, hoping it would come back again to feed them later. They apologized to it. And then lo and behold, the next season, it showed back up. It's just I don't see that connection, that hunter human connection, or hunter prey connection's gone now. We're not thankful for the things that we were given quite
mhm,
as we
mhm,
used to be
mhm,
because
mhm,
the pursuit of it's no longer there. Like I can go get steaks from the store today and not even see the animal that it came
mhm,
from.
mhm,
It's just there's a disconnect now. And I think there's a disconnect with everything in the world. Now, I'm not saying we should go hunt and kill everything. I'm not saying that at all. You can witness life when you grow something. You
mhm,
can witness the beauty of it. Then you can harvest it and then watch it happen again. There's, I don't know, there's a deep philosophical and biological thing that goes on in my head when I look at these things. And I hope the same can be said for everyone else too, because that's where mythology is interesting. That's where religion is honestly interesting. It's coping, it's understanding, and it's rationalizing it. And I think the Force is that. I think that's all that George Lucas wanted us to do with the Force. We return back to it. Then we come back through it later. It's heavy.
That's beautiful. No, no, no. I couldn't have put words to paper or to microphone in a more beautiful and
Oh, I love
poignant
you.
way. So like I definitely appreciate you saying those words and sharing your stories with us. That was good. That was meaningful. That was thank you. I definitely appreciate that.
You're so sweet, Gus. And look,
No, no.
I I hope for anything that you leave this conversation, the listeners leave this conversation feeling a little bit more enlightened, not about their place in this world, but about the subject that we came here to talk about, because it's so much more than the clickbait articles. It's so
Mhm,
much more than
mhm,
anything.
mhm, mhm.
It's life itself. There's a sacred nature to it all.
It's not content.
No, it's not content, and God bless you for saying that because I had a family member like, why would you spend so much time on talking about something that's not real? But to me, I mean, everything I'm looking at is from a perspective of a real
Mhm, mhm,
person. this. I'm not saying Cassian Andor is real.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying the themes in it certainly are. I'm not saying the Anasaia twins are real, and that's possible, though it kind of is with CRISPR. I am saying that there is a very beautiful, nuanced nature that you don't appreciate when you go lightsabers go burr or TIE
Mm-hmm.
fighter
Mm-hmm.
makes a cool noise. There's always a little bit more layer to it, and George Lucas did that. He did that for a reason, you know?
I mean, it's one of my favorite quotes is from Guillermo del Toro. I don't remember where or when he said this, but it was basically he's telling like a group of students or something, saying every single story in humanity has been told, but no one has heard your voice tell it. And I think that's one of
Yes.
the most important parts of like this whole human experience, right? It's not just
Mhm.
seeing the story, it's seeing your interpretation of the story and like how things play out in your mind and through your eyes. And I think that that's what a lot of, what Andor does, what Acolyte does, what George did with the originals and the prequels, what Ryan did with the Last Jedi, what JJ did with the Force Awakens. Like we're telling stories that we're all familiar with, but we're
Yeah.
kind of giving our own spin, our own interpretation, and our own experiences are being put through that lens. And like I think we're the more richer for it because we get to live other people's lives through these stories
Yes.
in a way that we otherwise wouldn't have. And it
Oh
just makes
yeah.
the human condition a little better, I think, than it would have been otherwise.
And look, let's be real. 25 years ago, these conversations couldn't have happened.
Mhm.
I mean, they could have happened in terms of like symbiosis and looking at the Phantom Menace, but like, you know, we've gone through a lot as a fandom and as people, and most importantly, just in terms of how we digest art to get to the point where we can actually look at this stuff seriously. Because even 5 years ago, people wouldn't have taken this conversation seriously. They just wouldn't have. I would hope someone does, and I know you did, and
Mhm,
your
mhm.
listeners probably did. And I hope some people feel a little bit more transcendent after this discussion, because that's all
Yes.
this is supposed to make you feel. I mean, art is supposed to make you feel out of your body.
Mhm,
And anytime I discuss this with you or with any other of our friends, like it's supposed to feel out of body. You're supposed to
mhm.
feel, wow, I didn't realize that. Now I realize that. And that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, you're
It's
supposed to want to think about the things outside and around a thing instead
yes.
of the thing itself, which I think it's one of the reasons that I'm very happy that you were able to get the fan stage or the university
Yes.
stage, sorry, so you could talk about this topic that you're very passionate about. Because I think that we as a society and we as Star Wars fans are the richer when we talk about Star Wars and the rest of the stories and
Of
narratives
course.
that we enjoy in a more critical way. And it's not to discredit other ways of talking about things, but when I see how many people, I'm not gonna say most, but many people talk about Star Wars or Star Trek or Game of Thrones or whatever media or story that you want to call it, it's always like very blasé, right, and very surface, and like you say, like the phrase of the day, very power level oriented. Which
Mhm.
Mandalorian has the coolest armor? Which fine, that's a fun conversation to have. We've all
Yeah, of
talked
course.
about it, but I think that we're richer for talking about like, hey, but what does it mean?
Yeah, of course.
You know,
What does it
and
mean?
I think that having like podcasts like your presentations at the university stage, apologies, at the university stage like yours are extremely important, and we need voices like yours to be loud and talking about things in ways that we wouldn't have otherwise thought about it, because maybe we don't agree with it, but I think
Of
it
course.
it enriches how we engage with it, because it's like, okay, I don't, maybe I don't like get it 100%, or it unlocks something else, and it's like, oh, I can see it in this other way now thanks to you or something like that. And I think our conversations become much more enjoyable and richer and
Mhm.
stimulating when we're kind of seeing all these points of views that
Of course.
maybe we wouldn't have been able to get on our own. So thank you for this
Oh, I love
enlightening
you.
conversation. I definitely look forward to seeing the full uncensored Professor Jayro version over in Japan.
Uncensored.
But before we wrap up,
Yeah.
Scotty, tell us a little bit more about what we can expect from you and Bombad Cast going
Oh,
up to Star Wars Celebration, and what other nuggets can you share with us about Scotty Jayro, Professor Jayro in Japan at
I
Star Wars
didn't. So
Celebration and University stage?
it's it currently, if you look at the data, let me see. We're exactly, I don't know from my panel, but from being in Japan, I am exactly, let's see, 47 days away from being in Japan. And that's an exciting thing to say within itself. Bombad cast over those 47 days. We're going to be doing live streams every Thursday. This Thursday, if you're listening to it this week at the time of airing, Thursday, what is this Thursday's date? It'll be the 27th. We'll be taking your questions, Q&A. So we never do
Oh,
Q&As.
yeah.
We've done a Q&A ever for Bombad Cast. So you're going to come and
You're gonna
chat and do
put
that.
Alex and Molly out of business.
Oh my God! Just watch out, y'all. I'm gonna build Legos and answer your silly questions. But no, we'll obviously be covering Andor. We'll be
Mhm.
hyping up Celebration. I have the privilege of being on this podcast, which you have just listened to, but I'll be in other podcasts talking about Midi-Chlorians. I know
The
Brennan
competition.
Marr. Oh, there's competition. Brennan Marr, and what's great, all different, all different discussions. Eli was on Eli's show, Brennan Marr's show. Patroners, they were not. I'm going to be on Honest to Claude as well with Eric Elliott. I'm going to be on Force Center. So like, there's different levels this will go to, and we'll look at it from all different perspectives. But yeah, Bombad Cast live every Thursday at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. We've been doing that now for 5 years, 6 years really, and we plan on doing some stuff in the near future, covering Andor obviously, and hyping up Japan and looking at things from different perspectives as we always do at our silly little show. But
Damn.
maybe
Yeah.
maybe you'll show up. Maybe we'll
That's
see. I
amazing.
don't know. We'll have to book Gus. So we'll see.
We'll see. We'll see. I don't know. I don't make commitments unless you send me a calendar invite. I've heard that I'm very difficult to schedule. I've heard.
Ugh,
I've
the
heard.
worst.
I've
The
heard. I've heard.
worst.
I've heard. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm a 36-year-old. Am I 36? I don't know how old I am. I'm over 35-year-old man. I'm starting to go through a midlife crisis. You know, it's starting. It's starting.
Menopause.
It's start
Sorry.
menopause. You know. But yeah, thank you again, Scotty, for joining us, for talking about midi-chlorians, for talking a little bit about that silly little show Andor, for sharing some of your magic with us, educating us a little bit,
Always.
spoiling some of your Japan presentation with us. We'll try not to get the word out for this episode too much, so that the hype around Japan is a
Oh,
little
it's
stronger for
nice.
you, or maybe you won't. Maybe we'll ruin it for you. Who knows?
Let's
But
ruin it.
thank you. But thank you. Truly from the bottom of
Thank
my
you.
heart. I appreciate it. And you're a friend of the channel, a friend of mine, and I'm very excited to see you very soon. Very happy to
Yes.
have such a short period of time from seeing each other, because
So
you were
weird.
just here in Chicago a couple of months ago for our lovely friend Claire's wedding. So it's
Yes.
only a short amount of time until the miscreants assemble in Japan and do some damage.
Assimilate. We're gonna be one organism.
We'll see. We'll see. I haven't bought my return ticket, so we'll see what happens. But with
You're
that,
gonna get stuck there.
yeah, it might be a good blessing in disguise if you think about it. But thank you, Scotty Jayro. Make sure to follow Scotty if you haven't. You're missing out on a bunch of great stuff and great takes and funny memes and whatnot. So we'll leave links down in the description below, so it's easier for you to follow Scotty, and obviously Jerry with Bombad Cast. So make sure to follow that and have a good time with that dynamic duo over there. Uh, Make sure if you're in Japan to go to see
Go.
the midi-chlorian Bombad presentation. It's gonna be great. Don't watch the YouTube video at this point. Don't watch it. Just wait, and get that expectation for Japan, because it'll be better for it. And then after celebration, watch the YouTube channel so you can relive all of it. But with that, enough about Scotty, enough about Bombad Cast. We have been Triad of the Force. Thank you so much for joining us as always. If you like this content, please make sure to leave a like, share, subscribe, follow us on the Blue Sky, because we don't do the Twitter, we don't do the
Mm.
Threads. We're unfortunately on Instagram for now until we have a Blue Sky alternative for that, so that we can abandon all fascist platforms.
Yes.
Our small act of resistance, which doesn't mean much, but it's a little nugget. You want to join our community? Our community is open and available for everybody on Discord. Just find a link. It's either in the description below or on our Blue Sky, and you can follow the Trial of the Force Discord channel and conversation. We're trying to build community, trying to build family, especially in these very hard times in which people are trying to separate us, drive wedges among us, erase some of us, but we have to stick together and create community now more than ever. So, as always, thank you, Scotty. Thank you to everyone. We have been Triad of the Force, and may the Force be with you. See you in Japan.